talk a little bit about, but what's more important to me is that I am answering questions and serving you and wherever you're at in your career. So if you have questions about resume, interviewing, managing, relationships with your boss, anything like that, um, questions are fair game here. And I will probably tie it back to emotional intelligence because that's my expertise. So there's a few ways you can engage. I love it when you jump in here on LinkedIn, on Zoom directly. James, good to see you. And if you can't do that, if you are on YouTube or LinkedIn, feel free to type your questions into the comment section, and I will do my best to get to those questions. And if that's the way that you're communicating, then keep me updated. Like if I'm on point with you, let me know. If I'm not, say, oh no, my situation's a little more like this. So I will, I'll repeat all this in a little bit, but Sanjana, curious if you've got something on your heart, something that you are wanting support with today, anything specific?
I actually don't know how this works. I don't know. I think Robert Grossman. He suggested I jump on a call with you, so I just joined. I
Oh,
don't have
fantastic.
much context about how it goes and things like that. So I would love to know first how it works, and then maybe I can tell you a bit about myself.
Well, if you tell me a little bit about yourself and have a question in mind of, here's something, a challenge that I'm up against in my career. Um, I will do my best to answer it or point you in a direction that might support you. I'll probably ask you a bunch of questions to get more clarity about what you're working on.
Okay.
So that's the gist of it. I, and I might say some things about social and emotional intelligence. And if I'm asking questions and you're like, George, that's a question that I'm going to think about and get back to you on, cool, totally fine.
Okay. So I'm Sanjana and I am based in Chicago.
Okay.
And I recently graduated with a Master of Design from the Institute of Design. It's in the south side of Chicago, in a university called Illinois Institute of Technology. And
Uh-huh.
I am currently on the job hunt. And I think
Okay.
it's been around 2.5 months since I graduated. And it's been crazy out there.
How
And
so?
sorry.
How so? How's it been crazy?
I think one, because I'm an international student, so that kind of adds an added layer of making it harder to find a role, a full-time role,
Uh-huh.
depending on my visa status over here. And another thing would be that I don't have too much of work experience in the field that I'm looking for a role in. So I had my past experiences in architecture. But right
Hmm.
now, I'm looking for roles that's more focused to user experience research and service design.
Hmm.
So I think these are the two things that I have identified.
Okay. What's your approach to your job search? What are you
Uh,
currently doing?
at first, it was reaching out to alumni and um, talking to a bunch of people in companies I was interested in,
Uh-huh.
and also a lot of cold applying and applying with referrals. But lately, I've reduced my cold applying and I'm trying to focus more on getting in touch with people who are not alumni and who are people who I want to work in companies I want to work with. So I'm trying to reach out to more people, have more conversations with these people. And
One reason why you're here.
yeah.
You're trying new things.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that is, I think, a good move. The responding to job ads, what I usually recommend for people is that they only do that half an hour to an hour a day,
Yeah.
because you're only going to go so far in there, and so many of those don't even get looked at.
Mm.
Um, so that you're talking to people, um, I think is a good thing. Is there what else? are there more things that you're thinking about that might be a challenge for you?
Um, no, I think these two are the major challenges that I have. Um, I'm also trying to attend networking events and events in the city, or even online virtual events where I get to learn something new in my industry. So I've recently started doing that as well. But I think one thing I am struggling with is that whenever I talk to people, they're like, "Have you gotten interviews?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't gotten interviews yet." And then they're all like, "Oh, the job market's really crazy right now, and it's understandable." And I'm just wondering what I could do better or different.
Well, so I'm trying to look at your LinkedIn profile just to get a little more sense of you. Uh,
Hmm.
so you, I don't know what your resume looks like, but I'm happy to talk a little bit about that because I have looked at a lot of resumes and there are some things that they are often lacking. I mean, even resumes that people have put a lot of work into. And there's another part of this too is about how you talk about yourself.
Hmm.
And so I find that when people work on their bullet points, the, you know, whatever you've got under your job titles, um, if you're able to show that you create results, so you might have looked up the people refer to it as STAR or PAR, situation, task, action, result.
Hmm.
So if you have those, um, you know, worked on this project and got these results, that kind of thing, as you hone that skill of bottom lining in that kind of a way, then when you are talking to people, you can also communicate that effectively for people. And then when you are interviewing, it helps you bottom line in a way that and helps you identify the context of what you're talking about with somebody and able to say, oh, here's the kind of result that I get in that context. So I don't know. I'm not looking at your resume. I'm just kind of throwing that out there because that is a pretty common thing that I come across. Um, and I don't know what do you know about what I just said? How does that land for you?
Um, I think I've tried to do that in my resume. I do know the importance of like using the STAR framework when you're having an interview, and showing results in your resume does play a very important role. I think one thing that most designers and people in the creative industry struggle with is showing metrics. As a business person, you'll always have like, I did this much of an impact or this much revenue and things like that. But as a design person in the research industry, I think it's a little tricky to show that.
How would you show that?
Um, I think I need to think about it. I have started thinking about it. Um, But I mean, in my industry, I'm focusing on user experience research roles. So I did X amount of interviews and X amount of surveys. Um,
And so you can get the numbers. Is there a way that you can see the result of the research that you did?
um, I think so. The thing is, the kind of work that I've done has been really short-termed, like in terms of the college projects, university projects that we used to have projects with clients. So that used to be like around 12 weeks. So we used to do research and give them recommendations, but not sure all recommendations were implemented and what impact that had on the business. So I think that's something that I'm finding hard to show as results.
Okay. What other experience do you have?
Um, so I worked as a UX designer for around 8 months before coming to the US for my master's. And during my master's program, I worked on a couple of real projects with clients like Starbucks and a bunch of more clients. And I had a summer internship for around 3 months last summer.
Uh-huh.
It's when I worked with Robert and his wife. They have a business in the art conservation industry. So I was working with them for 3 months. And right now I'm doing some pro bono work with a volunteering organize as a volunteer for a nonprofit organization. It's
Hmm.
been 2 months since I've been doing that.
Okay. Now, what results did you get when you were working with Robert and his wife?
So again, I did a bunch of research and gave them some recommendations of things they could do. It was about them hiring interns for the art conservation side of things, but it had multiple factors to it. So I don't think they got to do an intern hire this year, but they're hoping to do that next year. So again, the results, I don't know how to quantify that in this case.
If you did, how would you, if you could just say whatever you wanted to say, what would you say about that?
Um, like they hired two interns in the summer because of the work I did, or they had better reach with universities and university mentors to find interns.
Okay. So, is there any reason you wouldn't say it that way?
I think they did get some better reach talking to universities and putting their business out there. But
Uh-huh.
how would someone put that in their resume?
Well, part of what I want you to do is I want you to think it through because I
Hmm.
want you developing this skill
Yeah.
of how to talk about yourself.
Hmm.
So, two interns and them having access to a community that they didn't have access to before, or they didn't have that type of access. That's a result right there that you created. And so you putting that there. And also now educational thing for everybody who's viewing in and perhaps for you is there's two things that people are looking for when they're hiring. And these might be unconscious things, or one of them especially might be kind of unconscious. There's two things is does this person get stuff done? And do I like being around this person? Because you could hire somebody that's really good at getting stuff done, but pisses everybody off in the process. So that's something that you are looking for. So no matter what it is on your resume, if you can show that you get results, that you understand what a job is, and that you take initiative and you push things to the finish line, then that's one of the biggest problems that employers have to deal with is people who don't really know how to take initiative and who kind of flounder when they don't have information and um kind of make excuses to not get stuff done. Most employers are going to prefer somebody who takes a risk, maybe makes some mistakes, but is going in the right direction. And so if you can demonstrate that on your resume and demonstrate that as you're talking to people, that's going to be helpful. So how would you say that about some of the results that you've created that you were just sharing with me about? Just take your best shot at it.
I think in terms of the visibility, it could be something around visibility that the business got more visibility with their community and other universities, better outreach, something around that.
Okay. How did and how did they get more visibility?
Um, I think it was because we conducted interviews with a bunch of different types of stakeholders. Some of them were networking organizations within the art conservation industry. Some of them were universities who had art conservation programs. So talking to these people and just being out there, which they usually don't do because they don't have the time or the resources, um, and they're so occupied with their current
Got it.
business.
So notice how you start explaining stuff to me,
Mhm.
and I didn't ask about that. One of the biggest mistakes people make in interviews is talking too much.
Okay.
So for you, what I'm hearing you say is I established relationships or connections for this group or for my employers,
Mhm.
and they now have access to, I didn't hear a number, but they now have access to whatever they have access to. So what do they have access to now that they didn't before?
To a better outreach to network organizations and universities.
Which universities?
There's just three that do conservation programs, so it's not a.
Which universities?
It's the University of Buffalo, Delaware, and one more. I'll have to check it out.
Okay. So
Well,
right there, so established connection between whatever that company was
mhm,
and these universities. Like
yeah.
I can understand that.
Mhm.
And in the context of your job, I would understand why that's valuable.
Got it.
So what's another one what's another result that you've gotten?
I think this is one that I've written in my resume, which is developed a research plan and conducted mixed method user research, including in-depth interviews with over 20 participants and two surveys resulting in 50 plus responses.
Okay. And what's the results of the people's responses?
So the responses were used in clarifying the assumptions that we had about why people are not coming to intern with a private practice like theirs. And another result was that we created reports out of these findings from the surveys and contributed it to the American Institute of Conservation, which had around 3,500 members.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So that lets me know then what you did
Mhm.
and the impact that it had. Okay. So what are you seeing about this way of looking at your resume, interviewing and networking, about talking about yourself?
Um, what do I think?
Mhm.
Again, I think it's it's something I know that I have to do in terms of like showing results in my resume. Talking to you right now did give me some more thinking points as to how I could change some points that I've written already.
Uh-huh.
Um, and in terms of talking about this with other people, what my way of doing it has been is that when I'm trying to reach out to someone I don't know, a cold call kind of a thing on LinkedIn, I don't try to talk too much about what I have done. I try to talk about what the other person has done, get to know what they're doing in their current role, what the company does, what kind of methodologies they use in terms of what I know, what I don't know. Maybe I could learn something from there and improve on my skills. And
Okay.
then sometimes if I find some common connections that, okay, they did this and I've done that too, I bring up a little bit of what I have done. So they also know that, okay, this person knows what they're talking about and they've done a project in this industry, which is similar to what they do as well. And then in the end, I
Okay.
kind of ask them about if they know, or if they come to know of any open roles in their company to think about me and let me know, or just kind of build
And,
that
and
relation.
how much engagement do you get that way with people? Do people respond and you have some back and forth?
So this is an outreach. This is the kind of thing I've started doing very recently. It's only been 2 weeks. So I can't tell you if I'm very successful at it or not.
Okay.
But I have had around 3 conversations last week out of, I don't know, maybe 20 people I reached out to. So
Okay. So
yeah,
you're starting to get some hits.
yeah, I would say so.
Do you happen to know your personality style?
No.
I'll throw this in here. There's an assessment you can take, and
Okay.
there's a quick video for it. So I suspect, thank you, Jane. So I suspect that you're an analyzer, but I don't know. But uh, you might also lean into an approach on LinkedIn and in other ways, just in reaching out, of asking people, saying that you're interested in their company and asking if they would be willing to talk about their experience there. So, somebody, oh, I see you work at this place. I'm interested in a position there. I'd love to learn more about your experience there. And you can send that out pretty quickly. And of course, most people won't respond. But what that can do is, if a lot of companies don't have a great hiring process, and so if somebody is aware that they need somebody and they're kind of like stuck on it, and it's a position that like makes sense for you, and they're like, oh, here's somebody asking, they very well may jump on a phone call with you and just talk to you a little bit, and you might help move the needle. And another thing about that is it's also showing that you take initiative. So some companies don't have a good hiring process. It's like that's somebody's second or third or fourth job. It's like they know that they need to get somebody on, but there's all this other work that feels more immediate to them, and they're not quite sure how to hire. And so if you are a little more aggressive with it, you can sometimes make it happen. So that's another thing that you might give a try. Okay. Yeah. And go ahead and take that. You're welcome to take that now or later. and we'll send you the results. And then there's a little video that you can watch that will train you about how to spot other personality styles. So there's all kinds of personality assessments out there, and they're helpful. The focus of this one is to help you see other people's styles, to quickly assess, oh, okay, I think I'm talking to a regulator or a cooperator. Okay, here I'm going to shift how I'm talking a little bit so that they can hear me better. So take a look at that. Well, cool. Um, are there any, how are we doing with what you are logging in here and trying to get some help with? Sanjana, is there, how are we doing with your goals for jumping on here today?
I think it's good. It's been good. I didn't know what to expect, and I did like that we had a good conversation and I got something out of it. So I'm happy.
Okay, cool, cool, cool.
Thank you.
Anything else that you're thinking of that could be helpful now?
Not right now. I think I'll take some time to think about it.
Okay, cool, cool. Oh, James is asking for James, I think you're just gonna have to take it and see about the primary secondary cell. Let me know if you can see that link in there. Okay, well, everybody, welcome again to Career Lab Wednesday. I'm your host, George Miller. I'm here every Wednesday, noon to 1 p.m. Central Time. And there's a few ways you can engage. I love it when you jump in, like James and Sanjana have been doing, and I can work with you here. If you can't do that, if you've got questions and you're not able to jump in on Zoom, you can always type your questions into the comment section, and I'll do my best to get to your questions, and I'll do my best to respond, even if I'm not able to speak with you directly. So what I am talking about around emotional intelligence, this has a huge impact on careers. And things are always changing. And perhaps things are changing faster than they used to. And so, one of the key things that research shows is that when people are able to have access to their core feelings, it actually helps them think better. So there's a big belief that we've had for a long time that to be logical means to not be emotional. But the truth is that if I am out of touch with my emotions, I'm then spending a lot of energy just resisting what I'm feeling. So this is a key thing. Oftentimes in interviews, you heard me say earlier that a mistake people make is they talk too much. And when someone's doing that out of a sense of fear and inadequacy, and they're trying to compensate in the moment and explain themselves, it doesn't work so well. So if I'm feeling afraid in an interview or in a work meeting, it's helpful for me to know that I'm feeling afraid, that I have concerns. And when I do that, then I actually get higher quality data about what's happening in that conversation. And I can use the fear, use the anxiety to help direct me. So in a work meeting, I might not be saying anything because I'm feeling afraid and I don't want to look stupid or whatever. I don't want to step on anybody's toes. Who knows what it is? And yet, what's being talked about, I might be having thoughts and opinions about that. So if I can feel the anxieties that I'm having and then use that to enter into the conversation, I might say, I have some concerns about this, or help me understand this part of the plan. And I can use that anxiety as a way to onboard myself into the conversation. that will tend to work a lot better than just jumping in and saying what I think. Now, sometimes that's appropriate, but oftentimes it's going to be better to ask a question and to allow myself to feel the upset of the situation and to use that as a stepping stone into the conversation. If I'm in an interview and they ask me a question about something that I'm uncomfortable answering, maybe I haven't done enough research on the company, or maybe it's something in my work history that I haven't worked out how to talk about yet, that's going to come across. And so getting in touch with the feelings that I have about that before I'm in that interview is going to be a really good idea so that I know how to talk about myself effectively. You know, if a layoff happens, even if it's a big layoff and it's the company's downsizing, etc., that's going to be upsetting. That's going you're going to be having the thoughts of, oh my gosh, I didn't make the cut. And how is this going to look for me? And so to be able to talk about that in a self-respecting way is going to require most people to first go through what some of the things that they might not want to look at about what happened. And so being in touch with what we are feeling is so key to this. Because if I'm in a space where I'm unwilling to talk about some of the challenges and I'm just going to try to talk around it, that is not going to be so effective with people. People will pick up on that. And, you know, how many times in interviews do you not get a call back? Is it just, oh, you know, we went with another candidate? One of the reasons for that is because people don't, if I can pick up in the interview about what's happening in the company and we get to the place of, you know, it's nice talking with you and I don't think this is a good fit, and we're actually able to have that conversation, then it gives me a lot of data about ways that I can improve. Because once that's over, that's usually it. And you usually don't get a lot of feedback on what you weren't doing well or why you weren't a good fit for that. So that's just some ways that emotional intelligence and learning how to regulate my feelings and the kind of impact that that will have in your career. As you develop as a leader, you're going to need to take more and more risks. You're going to have more people looking to you for things, and you're going to need to communicate more effectively with less time, so more efficiently with people. And you allowing yourself to feel what's going on in the meetings and with the people that you're talking to will invite them to share more, will invite them to ask the questions that they need to ask. But if I'm leading and I'm just so afraid but out of touch with that, it's like I'm not conscious of that, and I'm just so concerned that my team isn't doing what they need to do, and I'm trying to jump in all the time and fix things. And that what ends up happening is everybody gets sick of the micromanaging. I end up being the one who's working really late, and the team that I have is not being used as well as they could be. And so it's going to require me to be with the anxiety of doing some training, of allowing people on my team to make mistakes so that real growth can happen. So I hope that that's helpful for people listening in and wondering about what the connection between emotional intelligence is and your career. And I know I'm thinking Sanjana, about you in interviews and just in as you're having conversations with people, you're totally going to be having a lot of anxiety. I mean, it's a stressful thing to be on a job search. And it's like, of course, you want all these opportunities that are there in front of you. And, you're kind of criticizing or assessing yourself. Am I like the right fit here and that? So, one of the tricks to do is for you to take on the position that you are interviewing them. And so you are collecting data about them and seeing if they are a good fit for you. And that will help you use that anxiety that you're naturally going to have, but it'll help you focus it in the relationship with the person that you're talking to. So if you're in an interview, again, instead of trying to look good and talk about your experience, etc., it's going to be much better to be like, do I even want to work here? What's it like? What are these projects that I would be working on? And to use your ignorance about stuff as a gift. That's a huge one. When I was bringing on uh, AV staff, I knew that they had more recent training in technology, and I knew that I was doing things that were stupid and out of date. And um and I'm a coach and I'm kind of trained in this stuff. So I knew enough to say to them, "Hey, part of your job is to tell me what I'm doing wrong. Part of your job is to look at what we're doing here and say what's screwed up about it. And when you have a question about something, if you're like, I wonder why George is doing things that way, please ask it. I need you to ask questions because I know I've created things that are not as effective as they could be." So a lot of people aren't going to do that, though. A lot of people hiring you are not going to tell you that they want you to tell that it's part of your job to say what's not working. So what I found in doing that with people is that then they would ask questions and they say, "George, um, why are you using this kind of device to back things up? Why wouldn't you just use this?" And I was like, "Oh, great. Now I need you to set up the system to change things so that we're doing it the way that you're recommending it." And instead of what could have happened is they might have just been like, "Well, this is dumb. And well, I guess I have to do it this way." And then kind of diminishing what they could do. And on the other hand, it ended up being more work for them because now they just thought they might be doing one thing, but now they have to fix this whole other thing that they didn't know about. So now you're starting to see, I think, that when interviewing, how your ignorance can be a gift because you can start asking questions about what's going on there. What are the challenges? Who are the people you're going to be working with? What are the results that they're looking for? What have they tried that hasn't worked? What has worked, etc. And right there, you're just helping them think stuff through. And a lot of times people haven't thought things through thoroughly. And so you're starting to get an idea of what working there would be like. And if you can hold on to a little bit of like, yeah, I don't know if I actually want to be here. Let me find out more. That's a little trick you can do to turn that anxiety from trying to perform to trying to find out more about what the position is. So I hope that's a helpful little trick for people listening in. So I'm seeing a question here. I think I'm limiting myself in my job search effort. How can I cast a wider net? For example, some companies use atypical job titles, or some jobs involve a different kind of work, but work perfectly with my skill sets. Well, from what I just shared, I think what I just shared actually addresses that question, James. Um, in your job search effort, the best thing to do is to reach out to a lot of people, is to do volunteering if you're not currently working, to get yourself out there and at least be volunteering, getting yourself out of the house, getting those connections going. Sanjana, I heard you say that's something that is so key. That will help you take the next step. And you know what? I'll say this now, because a lot of this is a tough work environment for a lot of industries. And there's several people I've worked with who at the start, and when they were interviewing and getting a job offer, it was, hey, this might be below your pay grade. This might be, you might be overqualified for this. And them saying, I get it. And I'm interested in this. I like what the company is doing. And it may turn into more for me. This might be a stepping stone for me. And I think, at the end of the day, I think I could really help you with what you need to accomplish here. And I've had a few people do that. And then what has happened is, yep, it either developed into something else. And as they got their foot in the door there, they started to see, oh, yeah, there's all these other things that you need help with. And yeah, the job is a lot bigger. And yep, okay, at that point, then the company is more likely to say, yeah, we'll invest in this person. We have more of a relationship with them. Or for somebody there to say, you know what? I know of somebody else that I think you would do really well with. And so it's a very good idea to volunteer and sometimes to take a pay cut, and to negotiate what that looks like for you, to say, yeah, I get that I'm overqualified for this. And if you need the result that you need, why not go with me for 6 months or whatever it is? So that's not off the table. I think that it's often better times to be actively working, because that gives you confidence. It's a lot harder to not be doing any job and to be going into interviews not able to talk about how you're volunteering or how you're working with whatever. So that's just one way to give yourself a leg up, is to make sure that you're doing something. And there's always, I mean, there's plenty of places to volunteer. There's plenty of places to do some kind of work. And I don't know, if I follow geopolitics a lot. Peter Zion says that a lot of the jobs that are being done in Mexico and in China, as deglobalization happens, a lot of those jobs are going to come back to the United States. And part of the problem is going to be that we have all these highly educated people, master's degrees, doctorates, and that now it's going to be hard for them to see, wait a minute, now I'm going to be working in production for this stuff that I didn't think I needed to do. And this was not how I saw my career going forward at all. We'll see how things play out, but people whose expertise is in that say that kind of thing. And so we'll see. So we're coming up on the end of my hour here on Career Lab Wednesday. I want to check in and see if anybody has any questions, anything that I haven't addressed that you've got on your heart, anything that you want to ask about. Feel free to type it into the chat, or if you're here on Zoom, you can come off mute, and I will do my best to answer your questions. James, let me know if that helped with what I just shared about your question. And Sanjana, anything else before we start to wrap up the hour here? Let me know.
I think I do have one thing that came to my head when we were talking, and that's about personally, I think I struggle with confidence when I'm talking to people, but that's something I've realized that's happened once I moved to the US. So I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's the fear that people don't understand what I'm saying because of my accent, or just
When
feeling
did you
like
move to the
I've,
US?
it's been 2 years.
Well, your accent is way better than mine would be if I was, I mean, yo hablo un poquito de español and so yeah, there's probably some truth to that, Sanjana, but I don't have a hard time understanding you.
Hmm.
I understand your words. I get it, there that is a thing. I'm not going to lie and say it's not. Like
Hmm.
there are stereotypes, there are all kinds of unconscious biases, but I think you can rest assured that your accent does not get in the way of me understanding the words that you're saying.
Hmm. Yeah, I think maybe I would like you to talk a little bit about how can you be more confident when you're talking to a small group of people or maybe even a bigger group of people. Because in my line of work, there's a lot of facilitation that we need to do, hold workshops with a bunch of people. And I actually like doing that. But there are times when I'm just like so scared that
All
I
right.
can feel it when I'm talking.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I don't know that you're gonna like my answer.
It's okay.
Um, but I'll say a little bit about this. So the two biggest fears that people have are heights. That one makes a lot of sense, right? Because, I should feel afraid if I'm high up. The fear has me in touch with the fact that I might die soon or I might fall and break a leg, right? Like that makes a lot of sense. The second biggest fear is public speaking. And so being in front of groups of people that's having all that attention. And I don't know this, but this is my little pet theory is that if we look back in history, uh, how often was it that me or and especially a woman being the focal point in front of a group of people meant death? How often was that happening? It was not that long ago that 1 in 8 men died by murder. So we have this violent past in that kind of a way, and so I kind of think that, oh, a lot of that gets triggered. And then another thing that happens, and this there's actually more research on it that I'm familiar with that I can talk about, is we our superpower as a species is that we are such good communicators. Now, you look around our political environment and all that kind of stuff, and you can say, oh my gosh, what do you mean we're good communicators? Well, we are communicating at an incredibly high level in comparison to other species. And part of why we were able to evolve the way we evolved is because of our ability to communicate in groups, our ability to work together. We're taking on a saber-toothed tiger, the fact that we're able to be in a team. And so we learned to need groups of people. And so if I do or say anything that's going to get me rejected, there's still that response encoded in me that I might die. And so it's this kind of amazingly exhilarating thing to be in front of a group of people, here in the United States or anywhere, in some corporate space. And it's like, yeah, no one's going to actually kill me. No one's going to reject me at that level. but all those little rejections are actually happening. There's all kinds of things that really are happening, and it is actually painful, and it is actually scary. So what I'm hoping I'm doing is affirming the fact that you feel afraid. You have good reason to feel afraid. And from that space, then, what I hope is that you can use the fear to have you being more effective. And I'll throw in this. What was this? I think it was Rollo May. Was doing a lot of speaking events, and he would, speaking at universities around the country. And he was criticizing himself because he's like, man, I've been doing this. Like the worst thing about speaking events for me is that I just get so scared. I can't sleep the night before. I'm all upset about it. And so he did all this work to not feel afraid anymore. So he could just go into the speaking events and just do his thing. Well, of course, he's listening to his recordings and he's taking notes on how the students engaged and this kind of thing. And what he found was that he did better when he was afraid. So he had to train himself back to being afraid again so that he could perform. And so, I think about it kind of like heights. Like I'm afraid of heights, but I like heights. I like going up the Eiffel Tower. I like going up Willis Tower and going out on the sky deck and feeling, that sensation of anxiety rush through my body. And so that's what I do with public speaking. And that's what I do here on LinkedIn Live. Is that as I'm talking, I notice where I muddle my words. I got like 2 hours of sleep last night, like flying over here, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not on my A game today. Okay, George, there we go. What are we gonna do about it? Like, how am I gonna? Yep, I feel anxiety. Okay, cool. What's it telling me? How am I using this? And so I love that you asked this question because this is the game, is not trying to get over my fear and all that BS of no fear. There's no such thing. When I have no more fear, I'll be dead. To be alive means that I'm feeling afraid. It's a question of, am I feeling my aliveness? Am I feeling the anxiety? I mean, we're on a planet that's like hurtling through space and it's like off kilter and we have seasons because of this. And it's like the whole thing's terrifying. so when you're speaking in front of a group, what's one way that you're going to use your fear as a way to engage instead of criticizing yourself for it?
I don't know. I'll have to think about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had one client who um what you can do is just start by noticing what you're feeling. So the research on this is that when I name that I'm feeling afraid, I'm actually soothing myself a little bit. I'm down regulating that a little bit. So acknowledging that and saying it out loud, or just even saying it to myself, like, oh, I feel anxious right now. Oh, that actually soothes things a little bit. The amygdala, it brings things back online, and it starts to have me developing my self-observing ego. So I can start to kind of talk to and coach myself through things. And this is a skill that you'll be developing for your entire life. So any little movement that you make is a win, because if you think of like you're on this trajectory where it's like you're criticizing yourself for feeling anxious, if you can shift that 0.0001% over time, that's going to have a big difference for you. And so you just keep working on shifting this. So this woman, she goes, she started noticing what she was feeling. She also recognized where a lot of those feelings came from for her. She was the oldest. She kind of had to take care of her parents and her younger siblings. And so she had a lot of anxiety about that. And her anxiety served her well. She was able to be effective in that environment. Now, when she was doing public speaking, she hated it. And she was like, I might take less pay and go do something else. And what she got to, though, by paying attention to her feelings and understanding, oh, a lot of this anxiety comes from my childhood. And when I'm in these meetings with these executives, they're just trying to get their company to the next level. They have their anxieties. A lot of these feelings that I have, I just had to repress. And as I'm kind of allowing that stuff to come up now, I can actually use that to make meaningful contact with the people I'm selling to. And so her one of her big wins was going into a meeting and looking at the faces of the people there, and she saw the VP who had kind of a furrowed brow. And in that moment, she recognized, oh my gosh, what I would have done before is I would have started performing. I would have gone into presenting, and she's very good at that, and I would have gone into that mode. And I would have been doing it from this place of I have to perform to keep my family safe. I have to perform to keep myself safe. And just that quick little realization there, she was like, wait a minute, no. And she said, sir, what are your concerns? Or, sir, do you have any concerns? So she used her fear to make contact with somebody else instead of trying to perform to get that person's approval. So coming from the place of trying to get the VP's approval, now she would have been putting herself one down. And that would have been getting in the way of the results that the VP wanted. As she asked his concerns, they now started having a mutual conversation. And as the VP is asking about the product that he knows she's there to talk about, she's now able to talk about that product in rapport with what's going on in the VP's mind. And it wasn't too long before she got a promotion and moved on to training people in how to present. So I hope that answers that. That's a very long answer to your question, but how's that landing for you?
Think it's good. Thank you.
Okay, sweet. Thank you so much for jumping in and asking questions. That your questions fuel this conversation, and as people are listening in, it gives them stuff to work with. So I really appreciate you doing that. I got to jump. Take care, everybody. This is Career Lab Wednesday. I will be back next week, and I hope we get to talk some more. Take care.